Okay, fantastic. So I'm affectionately known as the woman who wants to genetically engineer you. And that sounds kind of crazy. And you might wonder why I would want to do that. I mean, you're perfectly fine people, right? But there's something wrong. And I'm going to tell you about it. It's called biological aging. We're all biologically aging. And you've been told that this is normal. But actually, it's not normal for every species on the planet. Some species have what's called negligent senescence, meaning that they don't really biologically age over time. And we want to create humans that don't biologically age over time. And as a matter of fact, we want to reverse aging, biological aging. We want you to get chronologically older, but not biologically older, okay? So it's a big idea, and actually the science is already proving that we can do this. We've done this in animals, and my company, BioViva, wants to move it to humans. What do you think of that? Does that sound good? So let me tell you why we do this. So these are what you consider diseases, and they are, but they're all symptoms of biological aging. You don't get these if you don't biologically age, and these are costly, and they incur a lot of suffering and financial loss, okay? So here I'm gonna state my point in one graph. We're going to look at this, and we're going to look at age by group and deaths in hundreds of thousands. If you follow this graph across, you'll notice at about the point of 45, we see a big bump, okay? We start actually moving up into our aging diseases. We essentially start to get our diagnoses of what's going to kill us. So what is normal? A lot of people tell me that dying of biological aging is normal, but actually for humans, it's not. If we look at how we died in 1665, we actually died of infectious disease, and without medical intervention that we have now, about 90% of us still would. Only 1% of people died of aging. That wouldn't have changed without the intervention of medicine. Let's look at see what happened here, okay? Right here, we see the difference between 1850 and 2010. We see that before the advent of antibiotics and immunizations, we lost over 25% of our population before the age of 10. That's a lot of people. Here, this graph is a little bit mixed up. We see the difference of what happened when we brought in immunizations and antibiotics. It was a big bump in life extension. Our health span lasted a lot longer, and we were a more robust society. Over here, I don't know if you can see the little blue line that came in between the orange and the red. You're probably wondering what this is. This is increased lifespan of 6 to 12 years. This is huge, okay? This is within our lifetime. This is between 1970 and 2010. A lot of people ask why this would happen, and they would think, oh, well, this is, you know, new pharmaceuticals, this is Pilates, this is new dieting. But actually, this is only the cessation of smoking. So since 1975, we really haven't had any big advances. Down here, if our graph was working, I think my keynote turned to PowerPoint here, you'll see this is the bottleneck, and this is something that we'd like to break. We would like to see people living longer than the average lifespans, and as a matter of fact, if you go back even to 1665, the longest lived people are living about the same amount of time as the longest lived people today. You're just 6 times more likely to reach 70 today than you were then. So what's wrong with our system? Today, this is pharmaceuticals. 97% of all the pharmaceuticals out there that have been around since the 1920s only treat the symptoms of diseases. That's it. We haven't moved the mark. 3%, the 3% cures are still the antibiotics and immunizations. That's it. Still stuck with the same thing. But this is where my company steps in, and actually 13 other major companies in the US. Gene therapy. Did you know that in just 2015, we have developed, through much research and through different companies, almost 6 potential cures for disease? This is a big change. So why would we treat biological aging? Let's get back to what my company does, okay? So of those other 13 companies, they all treat orphan diseases. They treat things like muscular dystrophy and adrenal leukodystrophy. They treat rare congenital blindness and hemophilia. Why would we treat biological aging? I mean, we know personally why we would, but what is the impact? So by the year 2020, and I want to really get this into your head, by the year 2020, with the whole world, everywhere on the earth, there will be more people over 65 than under 5 years of age. So as the 5-year-olds become 15 and then 25, they become the workforce. And as the 65-year-olds become 75 and 85, they become terminally ill. We won't have enough people on the planet to actually afford the health care of this ailing and aging population. It's projected by 2040 that over 40% of the gross GDP of the US will go into healthcare alone. Okay? This is actually a problem we can't afford. The great thing is, I should tell you this, as lifespan increases, fertility rates go down, and that's actually why you see these numbers. Around the world, fertility rates are going down. A lot of people ask me about overpopulation. So why gene therapy? So I am a proponent of human use of gene therapy. So don't get me wrong in these slides. I want to treat you. I don't want to treat mice. But mice are a great place to start because their short lives actually help us analyze how much sort of lifespan and health we can get out of these type of therapeutics. So this is going to put things into perspective. So here's a field mouse. This guy is living out in your backyard and his lifespan is about 6 to 8 months. He gets a little slower and he gets eaten, okay? If you take that same mouse and you put him in a cage and you take away predation, this mouse will double its lifespan. Same mouse, just gets anything he wants to eat and doesn't have to worry about anyone eating him. If you take that mouse and you put him on calorie restriction, you limit the amount of calories he eats to only exactly what he needs, and you exercise him, you can again double his lifespan. And as a matter of fact, the mouse on the left is the same age as the mouse on the right. He's just had everything optimized, okay? Enter gene therapy. We change one gene in the mouse. And as a matter of fact, this is FGF21. This is a gene that humans have. You double that lifespan without changing any of the diet or exercise. That's pretty powerful. That's one gene. That's one change. That's a gene that you have, that I have, that mouse has. So how does gene therapy work? Okay, so what we do, today what we do, we'll deliver it in different ways in the future, is we take a virus that doesn't get you sick. We use AAV. It's a virus that has a very low immune response in your body, so we don't have the issues that gene therapy used to have. And we take out its ability to replicate. So it can't go in your body and make any more of itself. What we put there is a human gene. And what viruses are really good at is attaching to your cells and getting the gene of interest into them. That gene then goes into your blood and then starts attaching to cells. Oh, sorry, the virus goes into your blood, starts attaching to cells. The gene goes into your cell and it starts making the protein. So what you need to know is DNA makes protein and protein makes you. It makes everything about you. It makes your cell walls, it makes what you look like, it makes your hormones, it makes everything about you. So what we do is we put in genes that we want to see the protein developed. And that's what they do. They go in and they start making the protein, and that changes you, okay? So what are our therapies? So when we're treating aging as a disease, there's very certain things that we want to do. One of them is we want to lengthen your telomeres, okay? Does anyone here know what a telomere is? Some people know what a telomere is, okay? So telomeres are the caps on the ends of your chromosomes, and you actually have a repeating sequence of them, okay? You have a T, T, A, G, G, G. And it repeats over and over, and every time your cells replicate, they get shorter. And as they get shorter, one of my advisors says is bad things happen. And these bad things are things like cancer. They're misfolded proteins. They are a slew of incidental things that lead us into biological aging. Okay? So one of the things that we want to do is lengthen those telomeres, because the end result, believe it or not, is there's a limit. And when you get to your limit, you get senescent cells, and senescent cells are cells that no longer want to divide, and they really define where you are on the death curve. And that's definitive. We actually know that. So there's a gene called HTERT, and it lengthens telomeres, and we're going to talk about that a little bit later. We also want to reverse atherosclerotic plaques. So this is what causes heart disease, and it builds up in your arteries, and if it busts loose, it gives you a heart attack. Misfolded proteins goes into that area. We already talked about senescent cells. We want to strengthen your muscles, boost your immune system, because herein lies the potential fix against cancer, and increase your cell signaling. So telomerase-inducing gene therapy. So here's your chromosome here in the middle, and these are the telomeres at the ends of your cells. So why would we use a therapy like this, and what would we use it for? Well, it seems like kind of a fix-all. It's something that everyone would want in their cells. We definitely want our cells to be youthful. In research, it actually increases cellular division, so there's no longer a limit on how many times your cells can divide. It resets the genome to a youthful state, and guess what? This has reversed aging in animals. It's actually reversed aging, biological aging, in every human tissue it's ever been applied to. So we're really excited about this one. We want to use it for Alzheimer's to start out, so that we can start gathering data. We want to target the microglia and the Schwann cells in the brain, so that we can see if that will actually help clean up some of the beta amyloids and the tau tangles. BioViva's myostatin inhibiting gene therapy. Who wants to be stronger? Okay, anybody want to be stronger? I do, okay? I do. It's very important to me. As a matter of fact, it should be important to everyone, because frailty kills 7% of the population. And that's a lot. And it's actually, it leads into many of the other diseases that we deal with, like diabetes type 2. We have a myostatin inhibiting gene therapy. Our doctor took it 5 years ago. He's had great effects from it. The side effects are increased muscle mass, stamina, insulin sensitivity, and decrease in white fat. And here you can see that in these images. So this is not steak. This is actually an MRI slide of the legs. And on the left side, it is before treatment, and on the right side, it's post-treatment. And what is hard to determine from these, because there were two different MRI units, so they're a different color, is on the right side, it's 4 months after treatment. The treatment continues to build for actually 12 months, but you'll see that there's more muscle, which is the interior, and less white fat, which is the white ring around the outside. So again, this would be great for sarcopenia, which is muscle wasting over time, and diabetes type 2 and obesity. So we're very excited about this therapy. So I was told to actually talk about some of the future of genetic cures, because that will be very interesting to us. And I think that this future will come much faster than you think. Okay, we're moving at neck-breaking speed already. So I believe that they'll be given like immunizations. They'll be given to people younger and younger as we vet all of the various issues and promises of the gene therapies, whether they affect the germline or not, meaning whether they affect your offspring. So this woman here who's getting her gene therapy is 250 years old, you can tell. And she's taking a boost in gene therapies to ensure that she doesn't biologically age and does not come down with these disaster of ailing diseases of old age, essentially. So the future consequences of gene therapy and genomic engineering is something that we'll be doing later down the road. Right now, we're doing gene therapy, which means we're really good at putting one gene in at a time. Okay, so monogenic diseases, meaning diseases where just one gene is affected, we're really good at replacing that. And that's what we're seeing with a lot of these orphan diseases right now, and these companies moving forward to treat them. They're finding one faulty gene and they're replacing it. We're moving quickly into editing. Everyone's probably heard of CRISPR technologies, where we'll actually be editing in and out larger parts of the chromosome. And then genomic engineering is a future technology, and it's much more powerful. But here we'll see some of the things that we may be doing is, of course, organ regeneration, but right in the body. We know some of the genes now that turn on the ability for the body to regenerate. So there are animals that have these genes, and they are able to grow whole limbs back. We'd like to start with organs and go from there. Immune system. Someone was already talking about infectious disease, and we saw how powerful infectious disease is. So infectious disease used to kill 90% of the population. Today it kills 3% of the population. But as we slowly knock off aging diseases, we know that our big nemesis will again be infectious disease. Radiation resilience. I've talked to NASA about this. Gene therapies that help the body's chromosomes stay together and reconstruct. We're looking at animals that have the ability to do that. And when I say that, remember, we share the same DNA with all of these species. It's just what we have turned on and what we don't. We have the ability to manipulate this, so it's very exciting. Better vision. I'd really like to see us expand our visual range. Wouldn't that be cool? We could redefine what colorblind is. There are billions of colors we don't see. How would you like to see them? It's very cool. Cosmetic uses, of course, you know, if we're able to reverse biological aging, you will look younger. If we're successful, you will definitely look younger, because if not, we've failed. Your skin is an organ. And it works in animals, so we want to translate that to humans. Digital interface. This was an interesting one that I was talking to some people about. We are more and more interfacing with our devices. And our devices may, in the future, be actually made out of DNA instead of ones and zeros. They may be biological units that we're interfacing with, and that will really change us. Aging, intelligence, and physical enhancement kind of all go together in a package of things that most people want. And nutritional, so that could be turning the gene for vitamin C back on, so you're making your own antioxidants. You have it, it's repressed. It used to be turned on in the human, and it's not anymore. Autoimmune disorders is something we definitely like to get a handle on. So I actually got started into all of this trying to find cures for children. I was unlucky enough to have a sick child and ended up in Children's Hospital with him. And I was told, even though he would have died without medical intervention, he has diabetes type 1, I was told that I shouldn't be so upset, that I should look around the hospital. And I saw a lot of kids that are no longer alive today. And so I would love to find these cures for kids, and I went looking and ended up at a genetics conference and found out about all of these aging genomic cures. And so autoimmune disorders are one of the big hits to young children, and so that would be fantastic. And of course, congenital diseases, which we're already doing through treating monogenic disease. So this is our scientific advisory board, and they're some of the best best in their field, and of course I always like to give a thanks to them at the end of a talk. And this is just wrapping things up, and thank you so much for listening.
Now, Liz, as a follow-up, I know one of the big issues with gene therapy historically has been delivery.
Yeah.
Can you get systemic delivery? I mean, well, safety was one issue with the delivery, but more recently with the AAV vector, which I think you're using.
Yes.
Which is safe, but are you able to get broad systemic delivery? Because a lot of the gene therapies that are coming forward now are very localized, like in the eye or to a certain cell type, but not getting all the way through the body.
Yeah, believe it or not, there's some very good AAVs out there now, and we are having some modified for our company specifically. The second and third generations are getting better and better, and we use a broad spectrum AAV right now that actually hits multiple cell types. It hits dividing and non-dividing cells. So with the therapeutic I took, we probably hit about 30% of the cells. Our hopes is to target stem cells specifically, so that those stem cells go on to proliferate, which can mean about 1 year to a year and a half to real good results. We have a couple ways that we can do AAV. We can actually integrate it into the chromosome, and what's fantastic with AAV in humans, we know where it goes. So some of the viral vectors in the past, you probably know, had integrational mutagenesis, which means they can kind of just integrate anywhere and they can cause cancer. With AAV, we integrate into chromosome number 19 and in a very specific spot. But actually what we set to do is to just place the gene into the nucleus, and it will actually stick with the cell until division at least, and maybe beyond. So the AAV2 generally had the rep caps. It had the ability to integrate, and the synthetic forms of AAV, you might think of 1 through 9, tend to not do that. Okay, they took that ability out. So we don't integrate usually. As far as the RNA goes, it's very temporary, and if we wanted a very transient sort of gene therapy, that would be okay. But with the two genes that we're looking at, we want to upregulate these ones permanently. Now, I know that with telomerase induction, some people may have some worries, but we believe that our studies will show that in fact it is a protector against cancer and not the cause of cancer. So the worry with telomerase is often associated with cancer. Because many cancers, about 80% of cancers, have telomerase turned on. Telomerase helps cancers grow, but what it also does is it helps regular cells grow too, and it basically fortifies your immune system, and we believe that this fortification of your immune system will keep you from getting cancer. So the reason that a lot of people like the RNA sort of delivery method is because it's transient. We can go in and lengthen some telomeres and get out of Dodge before anything goes wrong. But we believe that the research strongly shows that actually going in and upregulating permanently would be where we want to be. For instance, our friends the lobsters have negligent senescence. They go on and on. They don't die of aging diseases. We actually know that they probably only die of predation. They don't get many of the diseases, obviously, that we get, none of the aging diseases, and they're fortified against cancer, and they have telomerase turned on in all their cells. They're not the only one. So we're taking a blueprint from nature and trying to use it, but that, I hope, explains to you why we're not looking at RNA delivery now, but we might look at it case by case. Since we're a small company and we treat patients, if that was the patient's desire, we could certainly do it. They would just have a short-term effect. Stanford did a study with telomerase induction in the heart tissue with RNA, and it did regenerate the hearts in short order, and the RNA left, but then of course now they're biologically aging again, and that's the issue that we're looking at curtailing permanently.
Now, Liz, you use that word permanently, and I know since the very beginning people have talked about gene therapy as essentially a one-shot deal, that you get long-term expression, right, of the gene of interest.
Right.
But we've seen some recent studies that suggest maybe you get expression for a while, but then it wears off. And then what? Do we get a booster of gene therapy?
So that's why we were looking at the immunization. So AAV is considered the most permanent gene therapy so far, but we don't know, and that's true. And so we look at integrating, but we also know that integrating, when the chromosome is unbalanced, we believe that it could be kicked out later. And so putting it in the cell, it does tend to replicate with the cell, but for how long? So we talk about permanent right now, but that's true. That research is out. It's going to take many, many years to find out if that in fact is true. But by the time you needed your second dosing, hopefully of gene therapy, it will be so inexpensive that it will be a negligible cost, and hopefully, you know, governments will actually cover these. We literally save trillions of dollars a year not having aging diseases.
There was one point I wanted to make to amplify on Liz's answer to the lady on the right, and about the cost. So Liz, you mentioned $250,000, and that's actual cost, manufacturing, not the end price. The end price, well, we don't yet have a single FDA-approved gene therapy in the United States, so there is no benchmark. There is one in the European Union, and that is roughly about $1 million. Converting over into euros for a rare disease, and many people believe that this is kind of setting the benchmark. This is kind of what we can expect. $1 million treatments.
Right. So what's really important, the difference between our company and a lot of these companies that are doing this is they're raising $1 billion to go through the FDA. And what we're doing is we're going offshores. We're doing FDA clinical level of trials where we're gathering all the data. We're using a professional company in order to do that, but doing it at a fraction of the cost. And so what BioViva hopes to do is actually drive the price of these therapeutics down massively. So as we see gene therapies come through clinical trials here in the US and come out with $1 million price tag, we'll be offering them for a fraction of the cost offshore the US. So we're trying desperately to actually get cost-saving therapeutics to the world. Right, so they all have to go through safety and efficacy first. We can't rush too much to market, but what's fantastic is some of the work has already been done. So what we're really good at is gathering the data on therapeutics that are already going through some amount of clinical trials or have really good basis of research in the laboratories, okay? So our myostatin inhibitor is very similar to a gene therapy right now that's at Nationwide Children's Hospital that's treating muscular dystrophy. And as a matter of fact, it's the same gene. So it's already through safety and efficacy. It's going into phase 3 clinical trials with Becker's muscular dystrophy, and it's going into phase 1 for Duchenne's muscular dystrophy. We're using it for a different indication in offshores, and we'll have it for a fraction of the cost to treat the whole population for frailty. So safety and efficacy is proven. It definitely increases muscle mass, and it increases strength. So we are looking at these type of avenues so that we can get products to market fast, very fast.
So Liz, I mean, are you essentially saying that you want to go after the medical tourism market?
Yeah, we are a medical tourism market.
So do you have some estimate of time?
Yeah, well, right. So everything is based on investment, right? So with the right investors, we'll be to market within 2 years. Right.
Question here in the middle.
Hi, my name is Daniel. I was wondering, are you targeting the younger past 40 or before that for these treatments?
Okay, so that is when we talk about, this is what a lot of people ask us about, is enhancement. You know, so at what point is it preventative medicine and what point is it enhancement? So initially what we'll start working with people who are terminally ill. So we'll work to try to cure diseases in compassionate care, because this is, for one thing, these people actually need help, and they need help now. Over 100,000 people die every day of aging diseases. These are all people who are opportunities to come and take a treatment with BioViva. So, but we know that in the future these therapies are going to be worked back farther and farther, and I would not be surprised that in 40, 50 years we're seeing these as early as the 30s.
Question here.
You mentioned medical tourism. I happen to be on medical
Medicare, being 74 years old. Excuse me. And I inquired once about being able to receive some care in Colombia because I have some infrastructure and some knowledge there. And I was told I couldn't, at least not to be reimbursed by Medicare. You're going to have to get some people to change their minds.
Yeah, we've got a big uphill battle. We are definitely aware that our first early adopters will be people who can afford it. We hope to, with their money, gather the amount of information that we need in order to bring these therapeutics back to you and get them expedited in the U.S. So definitely it's not going to be a situation where everyone is going to be able to take advantage of it, but if you can imagine 5 years out, if we're still cutting costs down, then this might be something that you can actually afford to do. You might be able to go to Thailand or Mexico or Fiji Island and various places where we'll be sitting and waiting for care. We actually have a clinic in Colombia, Bogota, Colombia.